What's up, bros, non-bros, and pros? Haladala. We have many things to talk about today. Let's take a look in the next few minutes over the market index, the market indices, and see what's been happening. We had a follow-through day today, which I thought was pretty powerful, even more powerful than the subsequent primary move, which was yesterday. And, beyond that, we had just a lot of thrust. And so we're coming in to the moving averages. So let's go into these indexes, then we'll kind of dig into the watch list. But I do think that, we do have to be respectful of today's move. It was powerful. It doesn't mean we're out of the woods. Obviously, we're just coming into resistance. But we have also, a big earnings push on Tesla. They missed on their numbers. They missed on their profits. They missed on their revenues and all that kind of fun stuff. But they announced some new products, something along that end. And the market likes it. And the market had been probably pricing that one. All the bad news have been priced in for the most part, right? It been getting hit with bad news every day. So these type of things happen. Only price pays. Whether earnings are good or bad doesn't really matter, right? It's just what the heck? How do we make money off of it? So the QQQs, I think, will probably gap up tomorrow. And I would suspect anytime you have a day 3 gap, so if you have 2 big days and you got a third gap, I normally expect a fade off at the open. And then, we'll see if that fade gets bought up. And so what I mean by that, this is the essential play that, on big gap up days, in this market, because the gaps have faded so often, especially a day 3 gap, it would be something like this, right? So this is like a couple days. So you gapped up. We were up by like 1%. We faded off. We actually went red on the day. It sucks in some short, and then we ramp it back. So if we get a big gap tomorrow, and we might, right, based on just the Tesla hoopla, we can already see at 425. Then we're going to have to probably wait out the open, and then we'll see what's up. Now, when I say wait out the open, that's on macro plays. What I mean by macro plays is just stocks that follow the indices. There are a whole host of stocks right now that are having earnings out that will just move around in whatever way they want because of that fresh news. And so in absence of some big macro idea, during this type of season, it's really, really good to just trade earnings names. They're going to put a little bit of oomph into your trades. And so keep an eye on that. Like even like boring stuff like GE had such an awesome run today, right? Yeah, the IWM was, I thought this was key today, man. It's because we saw a broad-based rally today. It wasn't just like, hey, we saw, Meta or NVIDIA go, right? We saw all sorts of stuff go. We saw CVNA go, right? And these kind of names, and Coin go, and Mara go, and right? It was across the board. And so we want to see that, so I thought that was a positive for the markets. You can see also, right, with the SPY, we're going to have a little bit of a gap too, if we hold into this. So just something to be mindful of as we go through. Things are going to be, if we gap up tomorrow, we're going to be gapping up into resistance, right? We're going to be gapping up into resistance. And so, we'll have to wait out the open a little bit unless you're trading earnings plays. But nice rebound for the markets. Let's take a look at market breadth here real quick. You can see here the T2108. It got down as low as 22, and now it's starting to bounce. So market breadth is bouncing. We had 445 4% breakouts and only 116 4% breakdowns. And so why that's good is that, you want to see an increase in, breakouts because that's a sign of a healthy market, right? You can have like 10 hot stocks and the market could still be up if it's the major ones, right? And everything else could be in the dud. But this is good. This is telling you, right? This is the biggest, right, update in a little bit of time since, we had, in March, right? So it's been a little bit. So this is all pretty positive. Let's see what goes on. Like I'm cautiously optimistic about the market, but I just don't want to chase any gap up tomorrow unless it's an earnings play. There are stocks that are having earnings. And so what I mean by that is like, see this GE today? This stock had news out, right? Multiple pieces of news. And it has like this nice breakout and all this kind of stuff. So this stock is going to do what it's going to do, right? It's not going to move on the downticks necessarily, every downtick of the mother market. If the market's going up, it's great. But if the market was crashing, obviously that would put some pressure on it. But if the market's just chopping around, these will be unchopped. Like, they won't be just necessarily so nasty. So keep an eye on something like this. So let's go into the watch list. So, this future was our kind of one of our top watches in the chat room for today. But I do think we could get some subsequent follow-through, 11%, a little bit of expansion in the volume. You've got a breakout spot at 65. I think if it gets there, you'd probably need to rest here and let the EMAs catch up. But it's got a good look to it. Let's add that. A little turnaround day on A-Lab today. I want to keep an eye on this because, sometimes these, if the market starts to heat up like these, I think a couple of these IPOs should start to really get juicy McGee. So let's keep an eye on this one at this range. General Electric, we talked about this. We get a week open on this. Let's watch this thing for a red to green. GEV, which is, I believe, just a spinoff from General Electric, new IPO. You got to look at the range on this bad boy, man. Look at the range on this. You had nice flag and all this kind of stuff that goes with it. I think you can come in and test these IPO highs, maybe even take it out if the market is willing. I think that's going to be a good one. If the market rolls over, right, like say we get hit with some piece of news or some data or something we don't like, these guys I think are going to get right before their earnings on the 30th. I think you're going to get some kind of sell pressure into this thing, right? Because they were supposed to pre-announce, or not supposed to, but they usually do, and they did not. So you're going to have some skittish traders, especially anybody that's holding from the last earnings. So let's keep an eye on that. Riot, there's not much to say on this. I've been putting this on the list for the last couple days. Did not even play it, sadly enough. I wish I did. But, dude, if this gaps up into 12, somewhere into this zone here, I do think we do a quick counter trend trade on this. The volume is great, so it may just pull back very shortly, but I do think you get a quick flipper on this if it gaps up into this kind of supply zone over here. SC, this is a Chinese name. You guys want to put a couple Chinese names in, Baba, SC, PDD, whatever, but they are showing a little bit of relative strength. I got Futu and SC as mine. I think both of these got some levels that we can trade around. Baba's a little bit more weird. I put it on because it had decent enough range today, and it was, it is so liquid that I do like trading it sometimes, but it is in the middle of nowhere. So I think the other two are a little bit better. This hood could be something for tomorrow. If the IWM holds up, let's see if this thing's got a spot here, right, where if it can curl through and get going. I think Google, out of the large caps, this is the one, right? You've got a, essentially a spot here, 160, that it could take out and start to run a Coupang. This has got it's got good enough range. You got to really kind of trade this with a little bit of size. It's not like epic percentage range for its price range, but it does have enough liquidity to trade some size in and scalp around and do that. You can see, you kind of have you'll still get kind of 50 cent pops on, and then you'll have to kind of rezone and play it again. I got a couple of these oil names here. You can see with oil, it's not really doing much, but it just had a reversal today, and I think that's going to be really important. There's two things that we need to track on this oil too. Is number one is we don't want this thing to break out here because that's going to bring back the inflation. If you're a bull, that's going to bring back the inflation talk. And so, hopefully this is a one-day thing if you're a bull. But if you're not, this could put some pressure on the market. But also, we could start looking at maybe a VLO, maybe even an MPC. You've come down a decent bit, 10%, a little bit more than 10%. And, right, you've got a little bit of rounding that's happening here. So I think all of those could be in play. DAL, beautiful look right here. You're going to probably have to trade some options on it because it is a little bit of, it's got a little bit of low percentage ATR. And then we've got a couple of these still on watch for shorts, right? If the market rolls, right, this is stuck right at resistance, barely any movement today, right? JBT, right, nice, just a little dead, couple inside days, inside. This thing is, right, congealing too. And then you had Nucor, really good range. So, a lot of people won't trade this stuff on the day of the earnings because they think it's a steal name or something. It's not going to have the range. But this had Still 10 points of range, man. That's some good stuff right there. You know, and the CLF got diced up too. You know, you open this thing at 20, like fading down to 1850. Both of those are candidates for green to reds, especially if the market starts to roll through. You know, we can, dude, you know, we could do a lot with it, right? So let's keep an eye on both of those. If we need shorts, you know, and even banging on JetBlue a little bit, get a gap on this thing. I think we could twirl that off too and have ourselves a little bit of fun. So, guys, let me know if you have any questions. I hope everybody's trading well. It is a little bit of a different market, so, you know, we do gotta, we gotta learn how to play both ways. You know, I think if we gap up tomorrow, then we may, you know, fade the gap, and then we'll have to see. We might have to buy like the fake short signal or something along that end. But there's going to be two-way action tomorrow just because it's going to be day 3 of the move, and you're going to get a gap because of this Tesla, all right? Guys, take care. Be safe. God bless you all. Peace.